What is color temperature and why is it important?
Yeah, color temperature is an interesting one. So in terms of just its beginnings, traditionally, now it's changing because of LEDs, but traditionally, homes are lit with tungsten, which is around 3,200. It's a warmer color temperature, and daylight is 5,600, 6,000 sunlight color temperature, which is bluer. And so that's kind of the general starting point, I would say, for color temperature. 3,200 is tungsten, which traditionally is home interior, and 5,600 is sunlight and outdoors, which is bluer. And then from there, there's everything. And so, I was fond for a while of shooting scenes that were like, if we were inside in the daytime and there were a couple lamps on, I shot I think 2 whole series, basically the whole thing, at 4,400 camera setting. And so that meant every lamp was a little warm and all daylight was a little cool. And there's something about that I really like. But now the last couple years, for whatever reason, the projects I'm on, or if it's my own personal aesthetic, I don't really know, I've gotten more conscious of trying to match and choose any pops of color very carefully. So if you're shooting inside and it's, evening. So evening can be a tricky time to try and light, because it's like, in your life, there's a point where you're in your house where you turn on the lights, like where it's getting a little too dark, but there's still light coming in. And so figuring out, if you're in a scene, again, intention is the leader. Do you want it to feel very cozy in the house? And maybe you're going to shoot, if you shoot right at 3,200, then everything in the house will feel quote unquote normal. But then that little blue light coming in will feel a little extra blue. Or you can say, this is that transition, and it was just afternoon, and now we're starting to feel like the evening is coming on, and there's still that twinge of daylight outside, so we're gonna stay at 5,000 in camera, let's say, and then you turn on the lights in the house, and it's very warm, and then that feels new or different. So there are ways to play it that give just this edge of some kind of emotion one way or another. And so that, I think that's the easiest way to talk about how to start with it. But you can also make all of your lights all one color temperature, and then everything is just even. But color contrast is something that more and more I'm becoming very conscious of. Is if you want something to feel very blue, then sometimes it helps to have something orange, because you need that contrast, which is very interesting, because if you start watching scenes that are just blue, blue, blue over and over and over, our eyes are pretty incredible, and they will adjust very quickly. And so that blue, the same exact blue, if you watch it for 5 minutes, by the time you're at that 5th minute, is gonna feel white, because we adjust very quickly. But if you hold color contrast somewhere, a little orange or whatever that is, you keep the eyes anchored in a way. And so that's something that I've always been conscious of, but I worked with a colorist who, season 1 of Pen 15, he brought an element of color contrast that I think really helps that first season. Season 2 is kind of a different look, but season 1, he started adding a little bit of blue to our shadows and to kind of contrast with skin tones and some of the production design, and I loved it. But it's nothing I intended going in, and that ended up coming in during our first week of shooting. He was there helping us create LUTs. So, color temperature is one of the big tools for sure. I mean, color of any kind, and color temperature is where it begins, because and especially now, using LEDs, you can dial in literally millions of colors. And so, what do you do with that? That's a lot of power and a lot more decision making. So it's a dance, and it's a tricky dance for sure. You can go too far or you can go not far enough. So yeah.
Well, if you go too far, does that make it look too, artsy, and then it takes you out of, especially when you talked about in the halls of the junior high, it wanted to be more stark and like, oh wow, everybody's on display here.
Right.
Good and bad.
Yeah. Well, so again, it goes back to what's the intention of the project, because there are shows. I would love to shoot a show with a ton of color. I did a show that was kind of a mockumentary years ago. It was about these DJs. And so because it was DJs, these really rich guys with not great taste, and they're living this big DJ world, we were using color all over the place. And it was a blast. It was really fun. But that we did that because it enhanced the feeling and the world. Whereas Pen 15, there wasn't, the color really is in the costumes. The costumes are very colorful in Pen 15, and the bedrooms of the girls are a ton of color in there. And so for me, it became about letting the lights be a little more natural and just using colors to dictate time of day, mood, or enhance or bring back skin tones, that kind of thing. But yeah, the color of those shows, because they are colorful shows, but my end is not colorful at all. We were draining color out very often. So it's because that's another part of it, is production design, costumes, the actors themselves, like what are their skin tones? These are all pieces of the puzzle, and you're trying to make it all kind of fit and not be, make it consistent and no one element overwhelming another. Like it's like a soup, if you put too much ginger in a soup, then suddenly it overwhelms everything else. So, yeah.